So, good day, ma'am. I am Christopher Advincula, and today I will discuss about the law on sales, agency, credit, and transactions. So, the learning objectives of these topics are describe and explain the nature of sales transactions, identify the functions and operations of agencies in the industry, and lastly, identify ways of handling credit business. So for the content, first, nature of sales transactions. Second, functions and operation of agency in the industry. And third is handling credit business sales. So law on sales, credit transactions. So in today's discussions, we will going to tackle the importance of the different law applicable in these three major, which are the sales, credit, as well as the transactions. So, sales is an act of selling. So, in short, mamaligya. So, the transfer of ownership of entitled to property from one person to another for a price. So, selling it composed between two people, uh which is there include this includes buying and selling the product. So this is selling of goods, for example, products and services. So for the credit, we all know that credit is just like utang. So the ability to obtain goods or services before payment. So in short, this is what we call an utang or the liabilities. So later on, we will tackle the law of a credit so that we will know kung sa mga policies or responsibility as the creditors as well as the katong giutangan. So next is the transactions, an exchange or interaction between people. So this is just like for selling. So um, transactions include between two or more people. This happen every day in day-to-day life, also in tourism and hospitality. For example, in the front desk, checking in and out of the guest to the front desk staff is also a transactions. So for the effect of loss of the object in a contract of sale. So this is depend on the situation. So if there is risk happen, then the people involved in business determine the terms and conditions of the contract. So in Article 1480, any injury to or benefit from the things sold after the contract has been perfected from the moment of the perfection of the contract to the time of delivery shall be governed by the articles in 1262. So determined in the articles of Philippines Constitution. So this typically means that the risk and responsibility for that item are transferred according to the terms and conditions of the contract as well as relevant legal provisions. And the Article 1262, an obligation which consists in delivery of determinate things shall be extinguished if it should be lost or destroyed without the fault of the debtor and before he has incurred the delay. So if the item is lost or destroyed through no fault of the person who is supposed to deliver it and before they have been late in fulfilling your obligation, then the obligation is considered as discharged. So in the Article 1496, the ownership of the thing sold is acquired by the vendee from the moment it is delivered to him in a manner of the ways specified in Article 1497 to 1501 or any other manner signifying an agreement that the possession is transferred from the vendor to the vendee. Also in the Article 1496 stipulates the ownerships of the item sold is transferred to the buyer or the vendee once it is delivered to them in accordance with the methods outlined in the Article 1497 to 1501 or any other way that indicates an agreement to transfer a possession from the seller, which is the vendor, to the buyer. So If the thing is lost before perfection of the contract, if the thing is lost the time of the perfection of contract, if the thing is lost after delivery, if the thing is lost after perfection about before delivery. So if there is item that lost, so there is also an article that stated about the responsibility of the debtor or the vendee, signifying about the terms and conditions when the things is lost in any situations. So for the sales of proposals property payable installment in the article 1484, in a contract of sale of personal property, the price of which is payable in installments, the vendor may exercise any of the following remedies. So these are the options. First, exact fulfillment of the obligation should the vendee fail to pay. The seller can demand the exact fulfillment. So, anong time. So, if cancel the sale, should the vendee's failure to pay cover two or more installment, so this time the seller has the right to cancel if the buyer fails to pay two or more installments. For the foreclosed situation, the chattel mortgage on the thing sold, if one has been constituted, should the vendee's failure to pay cover two or more installments. In this case, he shall have no further actions against the purchaser to recover any unpaid balance of the price. Any agreement to the contrary shall be void. So these are the outline conditions for a contract. So first, contract must be of sale. So it signifies that there is a sale. So what is sold is personal property. So kailangan na imong ibaligya is imong kaugalingon. So the sale must imong kaugalingon nga products, services, or any kinds of goods. So the sale must be on an installment plan if the sale is for cash or on stated terms. In the article 1484, it will not apply. So next, let's move on to the double sale. So caution should be practiced by real estate developers engaging in hotel industry rather, especially on real property located in potential yet unexplored provinces. The principles on double sale will be useful in case an issue on a sale of a real property to different vendees shall be brought before the courts of law. So a double sale typically refers to a situation where the same item is sold to two different buyers by the seller. In the article 1544, if the same thing should have been sold to different vendees, the ownership shall be transferred to the person who may have first taken possession. In good faith, if it should be movable property. Should it be a movable property, the ownership shall belong to the person acquiring it who, in good faith, first recorded in the registry of property. Should there be no inscription, the ownership shall pertain to the person who in good faith was first in the possession, and the absence of thereof to the person who presents the oldest title, provided there is good faith. So in the article 1544 of the Civil Code of the Philippines addresses the issue of double sales of property. So this article helps determine ownership in cases of conflicting property sales. So next is the Procto Director sale or the conventional redemption. So in the article 1601, conventional redemption shall take place when the vendor reserves the right to repurchase the thing sold with the obligation to comply with the provisions on the article 1616 and other stipulations which may have been agreed upon 1507. So for the conventional, so redemption occurs when the seller reserves the right to repurchase the property sold, subject to the conditions outlined in Article 1616 and any other agreements made between the parties. So these provisions allow sellers to reclaim ownership of the property under the certain circumstances as agreed upon in the sales contract. So there are many contracts on sales, and in order to apply it, we should know the articles between the sales, between the vendee and the some creditors. So vendor arretrato has no right over the things pending the redemption. So the vendee A retro will I takes possession to the property sold under contract of sale pacto directo. So the period of redemption shall be 4 years from the date of contract in the absence of any express agreement. So there is time allotted when it comes to redemption. So which is the 4 years from the date of contract. So let's proceed with the obligation of the vendor. So of course, vendor has also an obligations. So in the article 1495, the vendor is bound to transfer the ownership of the liver as well as warrant the thing which is object of the sale. So in the article 1496, the ownership of the thing sold is acquired by the vendee from the moment it is delivered to him. And also in the article 1497, the thing sold shall be understood as delivered when it places the control of possessions of the vendee. Next is the warranty in case of eviction. So a warranty in case of eviction is implied warranty in contracts of sale by virtue of which if the vendee is deprived of the whole or a part of the thing purchased by final judgment based on a right prior to the sale or an act imputable to vendor. Such vendor shall answer for the eviction even though nothing has been said in the contract on the subject. So this provision established an implied warranty on contract or for sale known as the warranty against eviction. So it states that if the buyer or the vendee is deprived of the whole part of the purchase item due to a prior or right or attribute to the seller or the vendor, the seller is responsible for this eviction even if the contract does not explicitly mention it. In essence, the seller guarantees that the buyer will not be deprived of the purchased item through legal actions or claims against the seller's prior ownership or action. So next is the requisites of eviction. So vendee is deprived of thing purchased wholly or partially. The deprivation is by final judgment. Deprivation based on right prior to the sale or knock off and compatible to the vendor. And vendor was summoned in the suit for eviction at the instance of the vendee. So the requisite of eviction as outlined in legal context typically include existence of sale, final judgment, right prior to the sale, act of, and compatible vendor. So there is warranty against hidden defects. So the vendee may elect between withdrawing from the contract and demanding a proportionate reduction of the price with damages in either case. So the period of prescription is 6 months. However, in retaliatory actions against of the faults or defects or animals, the period is 40 days. So there is also time allotted. The period must be counted from the date of delivery of the vendee. So next is the obligation of the vendee. So in the article 1582, the vendee is bound to accept delivery and pay the price of the thing sold at time and place stipulated on the contract. So according to this article, the buyer is obligated to accept delivery of the purchased item and pay the agreed upon price at the specified time and place as stipulated in the contract. So there is action for breach of contract sale, so extrajudicial remedies of the buyer. So the buyer need not pay unless there is delivery. So dili mo bayad ang buyer kung wala ang delivery. Also, the buyer has the buyer has a right to reject improper delivery. So kung na ay maguba ka delivery, so a buyer has a right nga iuli ang delivery or i-reject. So the buyer may suspend payment if this disturb in the position of ownership of the thing or has reasonable grounds for its disturbance. For the seller, the vendor is not bound to deliver the thing sold if the vendor has not paid the price. So yes, dili i-deliver sa vendor if dili bayaran sa vendee. So, installment says in Recto and Maceda law. So, the Recto law and the Maceda law are both consumer protection law in the Philippines related to the sale of real estate and installment purchase. So, for the judicial remedies or on options, first is of the buyer, the damages for breach of contract of the seller, recovery of the price, and damages in case of bad faith. So for the agency in the Article 1868, by the contract of agency, a person binds themselves to render some service or to do something in representation or on behalf of another, with the consent or authority of the latter. So it states that through this contract, a person agrees to perform a service or undertake an action on behalf of another party with the consent or authority of the party. Essentially, it formalizes the relationship where one person acts as a representative or agent for another, with legal implications for both parties involved. So there are essential elements of the agency. First is there is consent expressed or implied. The object is the execution of a juridical act in relation to a third person. The agent acts as a representative and not for himself, and the agent acts within the scope of this authority. So for the liability of the principal and the agent, Article 1883, if an agent acts his own name, the principal has no right of actions against the person with whom the agent has constructed. Either have such person against the principal. So the Article 1868, the Civil Code of the Philippines, delineates the essence of the contracts of agency. It elucidates that through this contract, an individual commits to providing a service or performing action on behalf of one another, acting as a representative or proxy with the consent or authorization of the latter party. So the essential elements of the agency, there is consent expressed or implied, the object is third person, the agent acts as a representative and not himself, and the agent acts with the scope of the authority. So liability of principal and the agent. So in the Article 1883, if an agent acts in his own name, the principal has no right of action against the persons with whom the agent has contracted, neither have such persons against the principal. For the law on credit transactions, so Article 1933, by a contract of a loan, one of the parties delivers to another either something that consumable so that the latter may use the same for a certain time and return it with, in case the contract is called a commandatum or many other consumable thing. So in this law of sales, creditors, also for the vendee, so the purpose of the law is to protect the vendors as well as the buyers so that they will know this law constructed and or the vendee and the buyer knows what his or her right while doing the transactions in business. The right in the liability, creditors, also in sales. So that's all for today's discussion, and thank you, and more power and God bless.